This Aptonoth was... It's still warm. These spikes, are they from... A Nargacuga! We're the first ones to spot one in the new world. Let's head back and share the news.
What's good, everyone? It's your boy Dak908, aka the Dig Dug himself. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, ducks and diggers, monster hunters and monster honeys. That's a lot of people. Anyway, here we go. Nargacuga. Now, Nargacuga was the flagship for Monster Hunter. Was it Freedom Unite, the PSP joint, the one that everyone really likes to go back to and say, hey, this is where I started Monster Hunter from. Me, I'm a little older than that, but we're not going to get into that. But what we're going to get into is Nargacuga and how, not necessarily how it's changed from back in the day. I'm going to try my best to not really talk about the old school Nargacuga and the other Nargacugas that I feel is much better than this Nargacuga. So instead, we're just going to talk about this one instead because it's the one at hand, the one on the screen. This monster is kind of fun. Kind of fun to fight. I won't say it's hard. I'm not gonna say this monster's hard. This monster's not really all that hard. If you fought Barioth, which you should, because it's the armor I'm wearing just before this, so you literally just fought a pretty kitty. This pretty kitty, however, is actually the precursor, the progenitor, if you will. It started the whole pretty kitty kind of thing. So all monsters like Tigrex, Nargacuga, Barioth. There's a couple others that aren't necessarily in this game that I'm not really going to get into, but if you ever see a cat-like monster, it actually just started with this guy right here. A lot of the movements and everything you'll see, like monsters from like Toby Kadachi, a lot of the movements actually originate from this guy as well. So if you see some things that, hey, looks kind of familiar or whatever, it came from him. The tail spin into the double tail spin, the tail slams, all these things came from my man's right here. With that being said, let's actually talk about some of his attacks. So he has a tail spin, and then he has a double tail spin. He has a tail slam, and then he has a double tail slam, and he can fling spikes from his tail. Now let's talk about all these things individually. So the tail spin is actually pretty quick. It happens very fast. Tigrex has an attack like this, but we'll get to him when we get to him. However, I will say that his is much slower, but it hits harder. I don't understand how that works, but Monster Hunter logic. See, he does the tail spin. You can actually use your iframes by just dodging to get through it. That's the thing when it comes to Nargacuga. A lot of his attacks, you can just iframe through essentially all his tail spins. Anything he does really quickly, it can just be evaded simply just by dodging at the right time. I will say the double tail spin is the same exact way. You just have to dodge twice. The double tail spin is actually really good at catching people off guard, especially if you're a lancing or something like that, and you are being greedy with your counters, and you actually do a late counter. Like, let's say you do, if you do a late counter off the first tail spin, odds are you might not get it in time for the second tail spin if you're committing to more attacks. So it's kind of difficult for there. It's not very hard to kind of see it coming. He will actually kind of like throw his head up, and he'll just kind of throw his head up when he finishes the tail spin. He won't throw his head up when he does a double tail spin. Now, it's kind of a small tail, but it's something to actually look forward to. Well, to note, rather. Now, speaking of throwing his head up to let you know what's going on, the tail slam. So he has a tail slam, and then before, I'm like I said, I'm really not going to try to do this, but before he would double tail slam and there was no tails. It was, well, no pun intended, but you couldn't actually tell if he was going to double tail slam. He would just do it. Where in which now he'll tail slam, and then he pauses for a good minute. Like, it's like a solid 2 seconds, and then slam again. You can always tell if it's non-committal, because if it's the full real deal, he'll slam the tail and the tail itself won't move, his head won't move, his upper body won't move at all. But when it's the double tail slam, he'll do slight adjustments, like he's revving up to do the second tail slam. It's kind of hard to really tell back in the day, and it's a lot easier now. So you won't necessarily get smacked with a double tail slam unless you're watching him. Well, unless you're not watching him, seeing how he's actually reacting to certain things. So react to what he can do. Now let's talk about the flinging of the scales. He can fling scales at you from his tail. He will only fling scales from his tail if his tail is flinged up and charged up. He does this by honestly wiggling his tail around to get it all spiked up or whatever. I don't know how cats do this. It's just something that he does. He just gets it all primed up and ready to go. Once you run into or get hit with these scales, you will rather be subjected to bleed. So unless you're bringing Asteria Jerky or you do the crouch tech, you might actually get caught up with the madness. And if let alone, bleeding is way more dangerous than that of poison, because poison is a gradual thing and it's slow. Bleeding it hurts more as you progress. So if you have if you're moving a lot, the bleeding's gonna get you. You can get the smack by actually just getting hit randomly. Like you'll be bleeding and then get hit by a monster, and then you'll get the hit damage and the bleed damage from moving. So it's kind of a bit of an issue. So you want to really look out for that. It's kind of a doozy. So when you do fight my man Nargacugas, you really want to make sure that you're not getting smacked with the ugly stuff. So with all those attacks noted, that's essentially all you really need to know. What he does like to do, though, if you remember from my Barioth video, how Barioth like to actually stay in your blind spots when he moves around you, Nargacuga is the same way. So what I will say is keep your head on a swivel. If you use the little target things where you can keep your camera locked on the monster, which I don't even, is that in this game still? I think it is. I don't really use it, but if you can use the target thing, I would use it to your advantage if you kind of feel the need to use it, so that way you can keep your eyes on Nargacuga himself, because he likes to be tricky. He's a little tricky, hard to get your hands on kind of monster. So do what you can to keep him in your sight, in your line of sight, and you should do fine. You should do relatively okay. Other than that, I recommend going in here with his elemental weakness being that of fire and or thunder. Honestly, either of which is fine. Yeah, either of which are fine. Like I said, by now in the last video, you should start really trying to look for other elemental weapons from monsters that you probably have yet to fight through the main story. You want to actually branch out and go to the other ones. If you played the base game, you probably have a couple of these weapons already, but they're not maxed out, but they're not G rank, master rank, whatever. But I would really recommend you guys do so. Try to get those joints master rank. If it's like a Rathalos weapon, upgrade that. If it's a if it's like a Kieran weapon, you could probably do that. Or maybe even some goat. Actually, if it's goat butter, kind of hold out. Just try your best to get more fire. Fire is probably going to be your easy. I don't know. Tobic can. Okay, either or. Try to get some fire, some thunder. I'd recommend some Tobic because Tobic is easier to get your hands onto as of right now, because I mean he's kind of in this particular tier of monster to where you can fight him before you fight Nargacuga. So with that said, let's talk about Nargacuga's gear, because it's actually pretty solid, all things considered. Okay, so now when we look at the Nargacuga gear, we should really look at how it's changed over the years. It hasn't, so that's one thing I always find kind of weird about the monster they brought up from the back in the day. The gear and everything looks exactly the same. If anything, they're high rank versions. But nevertheless, here's Nargacuga. So the Nargacuga gear gives you 5 points to evade window, 3 points to peak performance, 3 points to stamina surge, 2 points to stealth, 1 to piercing shots, and speed crawler. Speed crawler is utterly useless. Evade window makes it exceedingly easy for you to actually duck and dodge and dip and not necessarily get hit, which is cool, especially if you're actually trying to grind Nargacuga, let's say for a weapon. I would recommend actually maybe making a couple of its pieces first, if anything the ones with evade window, so that way you can use your iframes to actually dodge through all of his attacks, so that way you're not hit at all and you can smack the monster 4 times as fast. Because I did talk about the iframes. It's a very important thing. People like to practice their iframe ability on Nargacuga because the attacks actually happen so quickly and you can actually iframe through so many. Now, peak performance is a great skill to actually have coupled with evade extender, because if you're not getting hit, your attack is getting boosted, so that's kind of cool. Stamina surge is really good, so that way when you're doing all this evading, you can actually keep your stamina up so you can evade even more. Stealth, so that way you can put stealth, I guess it's one of those things you kind of have to have on the set where a monster's like a pretty kitty who likes to lurk in the darkness kind of thing. So I guess that's kind of that. Piercing shots and speed crawler, whatever. Speed crawler is because of the way the monster moves. It's not because the skill is good. The skill is actually 100% trash. Now, if you look at the set bonus, you're getting true razor sharp and / spare shot. Spare shot is sometimes you won't lose any ammo when you take a shot, but true razor sharp is like razor sharp 0.5. Like I don't know the exact numbers on it. You do lose weapon sharpness, but it takes a lot longer to do so, even more so than that of standard razor sharp. So what I would do, especially for mix sets, grab 3 of your pieces, probably some pieces that give evade windows. So let's say the waist, the chest, and let's just say the legs. Get those, you're evaded all the way out, nice and tight, and you get a true razor sharp for your set. Not a bad set to do. Now also for the B variant, again, mostly the same skills, but you lose quite a few. For the most part, the raw joints is still there. Evade windows, stamina surge. You do lose out on peak performance, and I guess what was the other one? Stealth. But who cares about stealth, honestly? And speed crawler. Who really cares about speed crawler? So if anything, if you don't care about the madness, you can probably go with the beta version, and with the addition to more slots, especially the level 4 slots, you probably get your preferred skill set. Now, its weapons are actually pretty decent as well. For the most part, the one thing you can really note about Nargacuga weapons is that they actually have high natural sharpness, and they have pretty good affinity, almost as good as the Barrett's affinity as it stands right now, because it used to be the other way around. Nargacuga had the highest affinity, Breath was like a good second, now it's swapped. On top of that, it doesn't have an element off the jump. It has to be awakened to an element, usually poison. So if you want to use the non-elemental boost on top of the high natural sharpness, so you might be able to get a purple sharpness weapon with this pretty nicely. But again, the thing that it really drags the weapons down is its actual raw attack stat, which isn't very high. But you know, with a decent, if not high, affinity stat, it kind of makes up in certain regards. So it really depends on how you go. All those weapons kind of take this particular route. They have the lower end attack, but have the higher end on the raw, meaning some natural purple or lots of purple with a high affinity. So it's on you how you actually perceive that. I kind of like it, especially for a weapon like a gun lance, because it doesn't necessarily matter about your affinity, your elements or your elements too much. You can just kind of smack it and just keep going, with the addition to the fact that your shots do more damage depending on what sharpness you actually have. I kind of feel it's better for the gun lance in that regard, but nevertheless, that's just me. So yeah, the gear is pretty solid, and it's not too bad. So to run a quick wrap up, let's just say this: Nargacuga is the monster came from back in the day. He's not necessarily a wall. If anything, he's an addition to. Barroth was the wall. Barroth is a much harder monster, in my opinion, than that of Nargacuga, but Nargacuga has a couple of things that kind of make you stand on your toes, but you should be used to the movements by now. What I recommend is, if you're having a rough time with Barroth, force yourself to make the actual armor, or if anything, fight Nargacuga instead, because, well, Nargacuga, in my opinion, is a little bit easier than that of Barroth, because Barroth has a whole lot of madness, stuff you have to hold, as opposed to just stuff you can freely go through with. But if anything, I would actually recommend you fight Barroth to get used to the movements and everything, because even though he's the harder monster, it's easier for you to get better at things if you take the hard route, in my opinion. So if I'm getting smacked, by the time I get something that's easier, I'm the one doing the smacking. So that's just how I feel about it. So Nargacuga, again, he is the monster. He's very, very good. Not super duper hard. Not even a wall. Not even a gatekeeper. He's just there. He's a byproduct. So I mean, that's what I mean by him not being as good as he used to be. He was very, very, very good. Now he's just very, very, very meh. But then again, I'm going to the history now. Back in the day, he was actually super godlike. It wasn't until, I think, the 4th generation where it really, really, really started to screw him. That's where he was actually getting really bad. Lucid Nargacuga is a monster in 3 Ultimate that I feel is actually the epitome of Nargacuga. But I will say, if anything, the World Nargacuga is better than the 4th generation Nargacuga, but not as good as the Lucid Nargacuga. So if anything, it's kind of fine, I suppose. But it's a far cry from what I know he could be and what he used to be. That's why I'm giving him such a hard time. That's why I can't really say a whole lot of positive about fighting Nargacuga when I'm like, dude, I know it used to be so much better. It was ridiculous. But nevertheless, Nargacuga is actually a very fantastic monster. The gear is very good, especially if you're just getting started. I'd recommend you actually make its gear, and you should be very nice. I will say this though: his defense isn't very good. It never was very good. Nargacuga gear was always, like, in my opinion, either low 3rd tier, or in 4th generation's case, 2nd tier gear. But this time it's not too bad. The skills are very, very solid, but the defense is utterly lacking. Nevertheless, use that evade window to your fullest extent, and you might actually be able to battle some tougher monsters while not getting hit. Granted, you might get smacked pretty good when you do get hit, but I would recommend that if you do get nice with the evade window, it's a very, 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 very useful way to actually learn to hunt. Evade hunting, very powerful hunting style. So I don't know, give it a try nevertheless. And also don't forget his gear. It's pretty good, not the best. It's just like it's kind of good. It's better than Tigrex in some regard, but not as good in other regards. It's kind of a mixed bag. It's one of the things you really want to do, really want to use if you just really like purple sharpness and want to go for the additional multiplier. The multiplier isn't as high as it used to be, but it's still fairly nice, so it's on you. Again, the attack isn't very high. It's kind of on the lower end. You do get the purple sharpness multiplier, so I mean it kind of alleviates it a little bit. The affinity is kind of good. It doesn't have a natural element off the rip, so it's yeah, Nargacuga weapons. They've always been like this. What else to say? Nargacuga. But with that being said, it's been your boy. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to bring thunder weapons. Toby Kadachi. It's been your boy. Take care.